To the Neil Haley Show and Celebrity Interviews, live from the Grotto with Greg Hanna. Greg, what's going on, man? How are you?
Outstanding this week, Neil. Outstanding. And so excited. Dude, I have to tell you, I feel so young because I was a young punk when I watched Little House on the Prairie and their 50th anniversary. Really?
Yes,
Really?
we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Little House on the Prairie with a
Wow.
new book out by Dean Butler called Prairie Man, My Little House Life and Beyond. Dean, thanks for stopping by.
Listen, Neil, Greg, thank you for having me. Great to be with you this morning. It's Prairie Man all the time in my world right now.
Well, hey, that's the perfect thinking because you have such a built-in audience. How many Little House on the Prairie fans do you think there are in, let's just talk the United States?
You know, when you look at the amount of media that's available for Little House now, Little House streams on Amazon Prime, it streams on iTunes, it streams on Peacock. It is available on Cozy TV. It's available on a 24/7 stream on Roku. There are a lot of places to see Little House on the Prairie 24 hours a day if you choose to do that in the US. So it's often said that our audience cumulatively in terms of plays is larger than it was when it was new. Now, I don't know by what metric that's being measured, but there are a lot of people who love this program. In addition to what we do in the United States, the program is still running in over 140 countries around the world every day.
Wow.
So it has never been off the air since it premiered in 1974. Somewhere in the world, it's never been off the air in the United States. And then it moves around the world, but it has found a pretty solid, devoted following. And what it's not surprising when you know the program, but it's just confirmation. When we do events, and we all do events all over the country still related to Little House, it's so common. The common thing is to have parents, grandparents, and children come to these events to meet and say hi and celebrate their love of the program. So it's all ages of people who watch it. And I think that's one of the great benefits of the way Michael conceptualized, when I say Michael Landon conceptualized the show as a show for families to encourage young people, families of all ages, all members of families to sit and watch and talk together about what they were seeing. That it's the connectedness between the generation that were kids 50 years ago who are now sharing with the program with their grandchildren today. It's so constant. It's a beautiful thing. Michael said long ago, people will be watching this show long after we're all gone. Well, when he said that to me at 25, I don't know that I quite believed him, because at 25, you just can't imagine ever not being around. Now at 68, I look at it and say, yeah. And I totally, now that the program is digital, in 2014, Little House became a digital property. It went from being strictly an analog vehicle to a digital streaming property. And that opens the door to a lifespan that's just, it can be reconfigured, the codecs can be updated to be whatever the most current thing is, but it can be there for people. And so that makes it a very potentially ongoing present thing in people's lives. So it's an amazing gift, guys. I mean, to be a part of something that is so beloved and so respected for what it does for its audience, how it serves its audience, is an incredible gift to all of us. And I feel it profoundly every day.
So, Dean, what was the impetus for you for writing the book Prairie Man?
in 2021, as the pandemic was going on and you're sort of rising out of that, and really the fact of this 50th anniversary came into really sharp focus. I mean, 3 years away, it was going to happen. I've been asked for years by fans, when are you going to write your book? When are you doing this? And I always was non-committal about it. And then in 2021, early 22, so I'm thinking, well, Melissa's written her book, and Karen's written her book, and Allison's written her book, and Charlotte Stewart's written a book, Kenny Lester has written a book, Melissa Sue Anderson has written a book. All these women who were associated, I mean, even the two women now who were babies on our program all those years ago have written books. So no men associated with the series have written a book. So that really, once that clarity of all the female presence around Little House, and look, Little House is a dominantly, the dominant demographic is women related, watching Little House. There's no question about it. I mean, based on the Laura Ingalls Wilder books, the dominant demographic there was women. That's a pretty good demographic to be in, you know. And I know that this character, what I did on the show, had a very nice following among women who loved Laura. Laura was the sort of their, you know, their friend, an ideal young woman. They rooted for her. So when the character that I played came along, they were all in on this guy, or so many women were. And I thought, well, as a man in this situation, maybe I have something to say about this experience that is additive to what the women have said about Graham. And so that's what drove it. And I created a proposal, and it was walked into Kensington Publishing by a female friend of mine, Mary McDonough, who played Erin Walton on The Waltons. And she's published 3 books with Kensington. And the editor read my proposal and called me the next day and made an offer. And said, well, this is kismet. This is supposed to happen. I had an agent tell me that no one would ever buy a book from me. It just not going to happen. You're going to pay them to write the book. Forget about that. Well, this really, the offer I got from Kensington was a vastly better offer than you'll pay them $5,000 to write the book. And so I was very flattered by that. And I set out in January of 2023, January 10th at 5 a.m. in the morning with a cup of coffee and my laptop open on the table in my dining room, and turned on everything and started writing. And
wow.
By July 31st of last year, I turned in my first draft, and we start making the corrections and adjustments. And here on June 25th of this year, they told me, whenever you turn it in, it's going to be a year before we can put it out. So however you want to do it, I wanted to be out in the summer of 24, because I just felt like, one, that was the first practical opportunity, because I had to have time to write this. So that was the deal. I did put that time pressure on myself. I knew that I needed the time pressure. I needed to have a deadline. So, and I needed to back out of, and as a producer, I'm very accustomed to backing out of deadlines. So right. If it's going to be ready here, where do I need to be here minus 6 months, minus a year? So that's how I really did that. It was small bites at a time. It's sort of the way Olympic athletes work. No one goes into the Olympics thinking that if they're going to set a world record, they all would like to do that. But the way they grow is incremental growth. It's like, it's a pound more, or a tenth of a second faster, or it's all incremental improvement that people were doing. So I needed to write, I don't know what the number was. It was like, 1,000. I think I needed to write 1,000 words a day, basically, is what I needed
Wow.
to get.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask a different type of a question you would never maybe think about. What do you think Michael would think that he knew you wrote a book, especially how much Michael was a mentor to you on set and things like that, that you wrote a book about Little House?
That's a really great question. My relationship with Michael was not necessarily an easy one. He was a mentor to me, but he wasn't necessarily Michael was a mentor because I got to watch him do what he did. Michael did not say, in some, where acting was concerned, he had some very specific things that he asked of me, and the things that he got me thinking about as I was working for him. But I didn't sit down, over cups of coffee and talk to Michael about writing or directing or producing. He just didn't have time for that, right. And I always felt like I was a little behind the 8 ball with him as a practical matter, as one guy to an older guy. I felt like, it just wasn't an easy relationship. I had enormous respect for him, but it wasn't an easy relationship. And for years, you get told the stories, or when you come into this, Michael's this great father figure, and he's everyone's best friend, and he's, all these things. And I found a slightly different guy than what I had been told I was going to find. Now, it doesn't mean that he wasn't everything on camera that it was self-evident what he was when you watched him on camera. What he was, this spectacular father figure on camera. He was a mentor. He was a safe space, and he was a safe space for millions and millions of people. He created that.
Right.
But Michael was much more complex than that as a person. If you factor in what goes on off camera, around the camera, around his life. He had an incredible work ethic, and he played very hard. And he was not easy for me as a 23-year-old guy to just engage him.
I got it. And in a lot of these super geniuses, he's a genius in his own right as an actor, especially with the show and the cornerstone. The reason I asked that question was because there's not many male figures. And I wanted to point that male testosterone to Little House. And we just did it by Michael and you. And it's a very intriguing answer. And I ultimately believe a lot of times the ones that are so hyper successful, to a level when you talk about Michael Landau versus everybody else in as a household name that's still being watched 24/7, and they know him first person. If you say Little House on the Prairie and him, they'll say, yeah, that those geniuses that are going to be remembered forever sometimes are difficult people to deal with. Sometimes it is what it is. And they're not as easy as the on screen, because that super genius, that work ethic is hard to take off screen than on screen.
Yeah. I think, Neil, that's a very astute insight on your part. No one's ever put it quite like that to me before. And I don't think I've said in an interview what I just said to you about him and the complexity of the relationship, or something about the way you asked that question.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
all right. Yes. So we can go to more of the book with other questions, but guess what? I was just more looking at it in a way. We had Steve Gutenberg on last week, and it was so powerful because he wrote a book about losing his dad.
Yeah.
And we were talking and sharing about our dads. So that's where I kind of was thinking, Father Mail. We're going to continue,
Yeah,
and Father's Day. Father's
Day
Day's coming
Sunday.
up, so it's a
Yeah.
perfect purchase to pick up
No,
Prairie
good
Man
point.
today. Okay, go
Yeah,
ahead,
you
Greg.
know,
Next question. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
good point.
you know, and the funny thing about that, you know, right when Little House came out, 1974, I had just basically turned around 12. My dad had just died. He just passed away. And I looked at Charles Ingalls, you know, as Michael Landon, as a role model. You know, so here I am as a guy, you know, enjoying the show because I didn't have any other male roles in my life. So it was something I looked forward to every week.
Wow. And I think there were so many people who had that same experience that you did, Greg. I mean, Michael was just exceptional as an on-camera role model, and people, men, women of all ages, looked at Michael and looked at Karen Grassley, who played Caroline, as this ideal parental pair of people who demonstrated love and goodness and acceptance in their family. And it was really, truly a safe space for people to come into. The fact that in reality, the reality behind it, and really the reality off camera, we talk about it and it's sort of interesting for people, but really what's important is the work that people are there to do. That's what it's about.
Yeah. It's like, about the product at the end of the day.
And the product was exceptional.
And how many lives are changed? We could have somebody that did a horrible thing at one point, and Michael didn't, but when, you know what I'm saying, like, was just like some of these things. But if they were able to create something so powerful that changed so many people's lives as this show did, and how much and thank you again. How do you feel as being part of this? How you've changed so many families' lives to really live a great family life? Well,
you know, I feel like being a part of Little House has just been the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, there's nothing other than my own blood family. And I think I had a really wonderful upbringing. It wasn't a perfect upbringing. I mean, what's a perfect upbringing? I don't know what that is. You know, but I grew up in a large, loving family, in a family that loved and respected each other. There were certainly flawed people within my family, as all families have. We're all people. We all have flaws. I came to appreciate the value of family in my own family. And I think I was able to take that appreciation into Little House with me. And to this day, it's very important to me. For me, it's 45 years. It's not 50 years. I'm a latecomer to the party. So I came in the show's 6th season, but it's very important to me to feel like when people meet me, they're getting what they saw. I mean, older with a little more life experience but that the essence of the person is the person that they watched and enjoyed on the program. If they watched and enjoyed, they see that and they get that. Yes. And they'll know that this is one and the same, that this wasn't something that was made up or fabricated out of my imagination or whatever. What I brought was what I had.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of the way television works, and all filmed entertainment works that way. I mean, there are very few actors who really can put an exterior on themselves and invent something out of whole cloth that's not essentially who they are. Mm-hmm. There are those actors who could do that, but that's not most actors. Most actors, certainly in a cinema environment, are projecting a big piece of who they are, and that's part of the appeal. That's why they're hired, because of what they bring in the door. You know, hiring decisions are made in about 8 seconds when someone walks in the room for an audition. It may not be, oh yes, I'm going to hire you right now, but they know in 8 seconds if they could hire you. If you're someone who could be right, they know that very quickly. And audiences make the same judgments. when someone walks on the screen, audiences make a decision about that person, a lot of decisions about that person instantly. And being human beings, we make these assessments and we're pretty confident in our assessments about, we make decisions and we feel pretty good about those assessments. And it's hard to change them.
Right.
Once we've made up our mind about somebody, we don't really move off of that easily.
Exactly.
And I think casting is like that. I think that's part of the craft of the casting director, is to be the eyes and ears and senses of an audience and assess for the audience before that person, anybody's put in that position, who could work in this world. I'm fortunate, based on my upbringing, that I feel like without really thinking about it as I walked in the door, I was raised to be a part of something like Little House.
You were. Your passion is amazing. All right, Greg, go jump to the next question, because I know that we're almost unbelievable. 30 minutes is going to go fast. Go ahead.
It's going quick. It's going really quick. So Dean, what do you want readers to take away, let's say, primarily from the book after they absorb it?
Yeah, the book is for fans. It's not a there's history in it, there's some psychology in it, there's all these things, but the book is for, when I say psychology, it's like feelings and all that are in the book. But the book is for fans, and it's about a period of time in American television that I was a part of. And in that world that I was a part of, I want people to know, when they are done with my book, that I was very grateful to be part of that world that I was a part of. And the fact that we are sitting here 50 years later talking about this, Little House was never an industry favorite show. It was never cool enough. It was never edgy enough. It never had the heat around it that a lot of other shows had. But Little House is still there. And a lot of those other shows that all this heat are long gone. To be a part of something that's had this enduring appeal for people, because it's so basically about the goodness, or it teaches lessons or offers lessons about good choices, about family, about working through problems, about grace and decency. It's about all of that. And I think that's why people continue to watch it. And I don't think there's been a time in my lifetime where grace and decency are more important as a conversation piece than they are right now.
100%.
We live, it's hard to even really characterize the space we are living in right now. I think people find Little House because it's dialing down a lot of noise that just simply isn't helpful to the day-to-day choices that we all have to make. So I want people to know, bottom line, I am so grateful to have been a part of this.
Fantastic. And then what I was going to go and talk about real quick before Greg's final question is, now a lot of these are doing TV interviews. A lot of these you're not doing podcasts. My podcast will be around 25 years from now. Hopefully 50 years from now, people will be watching it. So hopefully this interview, when they go back in 25 years, 50 years, it'll be there. That's my goal of creating a library that I've done for 15 years of 15 shows,
years,
15 years and 15 years. And I've done over 30,000 episodes in 15 years. Yeah. So I have interviewed so many different celebrities, have so many interesting stories, people that have passed on. And I'm hoping someday what, Greg and I are able to compile, and Greg will just say, that's just a portion of what I do in celebrities every week, that this will live on forever. And that's why I'm so glad the question I asked about Michael, and it's Landon. I said Landau. I don't know. So I'm sure people made that mistake before.
Yeah, it's Mark Landau, Michael Landon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so,
Sci-fi, prairie,
yeah,
different.
yeah. But it doesn't matter. But the thing is, that's a powerful thing. And I'm glad you brought it up. And it's going to really, when we share this in little house groups, I'm sure they're going to be some feedback and more sales. Go ahead, Greg, with your final question. This is the celebrity question.
Great. Well, Dean, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to jump into that book. I'm sure I can get it on Amazon. Neil,
You
ask
can
you.
Amazon, Barnes and Noble. And you could just walk into your favorite bookstore and say, "Could you get me Prairie Man? I
There you
really
go.
want to check out that book by Dean Butler." And hopefully they'll get it for you. And that's good for the bookstore, and and it's good for the book overall.
Fantastic.
For in bookstores.
So here's my final question
Yeah.
for you, sir. So Dean, tell me, what do you feel is the most important thing in life that you've ever learned?
Oh my God. What kind of a question? I mean, that's a huge question. Well, okay. And I think I just said it, and I really truly believe it. I think that my life has benefited, I have benefited personally, and the relationships that I've had have benefited personally from the lessons I learned about kindness, graciousness, gratitude that I mentioned. I'm grateful for so many things, and I'm not afraid to. I'm not at all uncomfortable saying I'm grateful for things, and that has brought me so much good in my life. I think people sense that. They sense gratitude and decency, kindness. All of these things are values that I got. I fundamentally am a trusting person. I want to believe what people, and I assess. I don't trust everything but I want to see the good in people. And I think that gratitude as a core is the most important lesson that I've learned in my life, and it has served me incredibly well.
Excellent. Thank you.
It's a powerful question, but you'll go back to some of the celebrities that have answered it, Dean. And it's intriguing to go back and going to celebrity interviews live from the Grotto with Greg Hanna. You can check them out. Finding them on all my shows. Oh goodness. You'll have searching Dean and say, let me just check out an interview with Neil. That'll take you years. And someone asked me how much content you have. And I said, I have no idea. I wish someone could compile it. That never know. Once I somehow hit the lottery, or I will hit the lottery in my business or something, then I'll say, okay, now I'm going to compile all this in years. But you did a tremendous job of really being authentic for your fans. And I'm sure, the women are so loved. I think a lot of women love you. Would you agree, Dean?
I have had so many women come up to me through the years, and it's gone on for a long, long time, but more recently because being older, they feel safer saying it to me. But I've had women for years approach me to say that Almanzo was their first crush, that their first love, the guy that they hoped they would meet was something like Almanzo was. So that's a gift. That's an incredible gift. And that's one of the reasons I don't want to ever disappoint people. When I meet them, I want them to have that they felt like they made a good judgment, that what they saw was real. And it was real, because what we're acting with, what most people are acting with, is some version of themselves. And with Almanzo, it was a very altruistic, good and decent version of Dean that people saw. And that's what the show called for. That's what I was hired for. That's what I brought. And I'm so grateful that I got a chance to bring that, because it goes on and on and on for people. And it's beautiful.
All right, pick up Prairie Man today and prove everyone wrong that no one's going to buy Dean's book. We're already proving it, I think, already based on where you are in best-selling book. Congratulations. And I guess really it was a bunch of malarkey. Appreciate it, Dean. You're going to sell tons of books, and who knows, there could be a part 2 down the line. Appreciate
Who
it. Sir.
knows?
All right. All right. That was a special simulcast of the Neil Haley Show and celebrity interviews live from the grotto with Greg Hanna, guys. Take care.